There is a groundbreaking development in Africa tonight. Take a look at this video of the ground breaking open here. The rift is several miles long, and some believe it is a sign the continent is splitting in two, ever so slowly.
A new ocean is quietly emerging in East Africa, surprising scientists with a dramatic geological shift. The East African rift is widening as tectonic plates pull apart faster than ever. Recent seismic activity confirms that Africa could eventually split in two.
Excuse me, I'm out of breath actually with excitement at this stage. To think this happened overnight, this is just geologic heaven.
Forming a vast new ocean between the landmasses. This transformation isn't just about geography. It could reshape ecosystems, create new biodiversity, and impact human populations. While few people realize it, this event is among the most significant geological changes in millions of years. What does this mean for our planet's future? Let's explore the East African rift, its explosive history, and the remarkable transformation now underway. The birth of a new ocean. Deep within East Africa, an ancient and hidden process is taking place that has the potential to change the map of the world. For millions of years, the African continent has been slowly but surely splitting apart, but it wasn't until recently that the process became visible in dramatic fashion. The East African Rift, a massive geological fracture, stretches across the continent from the Red Sea down to Mozambique, and it's responsible for one of the most significant tectonic shifts in Earth's history. The rift marks the point where two tectonic plates, the Nubian and Somali plates, are pulling away from each other, creating an ever-widening gap. This separation, once imperceptible to the human eye, has now become a breathtaking spectacle. The rift is growing wider by inches every year, and with that growth, scientists predict that a new ocean will form in the next several million years. What's happening here is nothing short of extraordinary, as the land itself is being torn apart by the forces of nature. This process is often called continental rifting, but it is much more than just a crack in the Earth's surface. It's the slow birth of a new ocean, and it will change everything. But what other unforeseen consequences could arise from this unprecedented geological event? As the rift continues to widen, seismic activity in the region has intensified, with earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and even lava flows marking the progression of the rift. In fact, since 2005, a series of tremors and volcanic eruptions have highlighted just how active this geological process has become. The events of that year were particularly significant when the ground in Ethiopia's Afar Depression cracked open, creating a fissure in the Earth's crust that was visible to the naked eye.
A new ocean could be created as Africa gradually splits into two separate parts in the future.
The rift's activity has since accelerated, making it clear that the East African rift is far from a slow and steady process. It's a dramatic and dynamic transformation that could lead to the formation of a new ocean. Scientists have been documenting this change in real time, and it's clear that this is no ordinary geological event. In fact, it's one of the most significant geological transformations to occur in modern history, and it could change the face of Africa and the world forever. Could this be the beginning of even more catastrophic seismic events? But why is this event so important? The formation of an ocean within the heart of Africa would not only alter the physical geography of the region, but would also have profound effects on the environment, human populations, and the ecosystems that call this region home. It's hard to imagine that this slow, steady process could have such far-reaching consequences, but it will. As the rift deepens, it will give rise to new biodiversity, new water sources, and potentially new opportunities for human development. On the flip side, the rift could lead to the displacement of millions of people who live in the affected areas. The future of this geological event is still uncertain, but what we do know is that the changes that are taking place will have long-term implications. Are these massive shifts in land and water just the beginning, or will they trigger a chain reaction of global change? The formation of a new ocean will also disrupt the delicate balance of ecosystems in the region. As the rift widens and water begins to fill the gap, the environmental impact could be immense. New bodies of water will form, creating fresh opportunities for biodiversity and ecosystem expansion. However, this could also pose a threat to the species that have adapted to life in the dry and rugged conditions of East Africa. The evolving landscape will be a double-edged sword. ushering in both new potential and new challenges. The flora and fauna of East Africa will either adapt or face the possibility of extinction, as new conditions force them to evolve or migrate. Could this new ocean lead to a complete overhaul of Africa's ecosystems? The implications are staggering, but scientists remain excited by the possibilities. With the creation of a new ocean, the potential for new maritime trade routes, freshwater sources, and even new forms of marine life are all on the horizon. In short, the formation of a new ocean in Africa could be the beginning of an entirely new chapter for the planet. The forces that are shaping this monumental transformation are still at work, and the world is watching with bated breath as Africa continues to split apart. What breakthroughs in science and technology might emerge from these dramatic changes? Forces of nature. The tectonic power behind the rift. When you look at the East African rift, it's hard to fathom the sheer power of the tectonic forces at work. The rift is caused by the divergence of two tectonic plates, the Nubian and Somali plates, which are slowly pulling apart at a rate of around 2.5 centimeters per year. This might not sound like much, but when you scale it up over millions of years, you can see how massive this process is. The rifting is driven by the heat generated deep within the Earth's mantle. This heat causes the mantle to become more buoyant, and as the material rises, it pushes the tectonic plates apart. The rifting itself is the result of the Earth's natural process of convection, where hot material from the Earth's interior rises to the surface while cooler material sinks. This process is essential for maintaining the planet's internal heat balance. But as the rift continues to widen, the consequences of these tectonic forces become increasingly dramatic. What will happen when the tension between the plates reaches a breaking point? This tectonic activity is not only responsible for the creation of the rift, but also for the intense seismic and volcanic activity that accompanies it. As the plates slowly separate, magma from the mantle is forced to the surface, resulting in the formation of volcanoes. Mount Nyiragongo in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania are just a few examples of the active volcanic landscapes that have emerged from the East African rift system. In addition to creating volcanoes, the process also causes frequent earthquakes as the plates grind against each other. These seismic events often send shockwaves throughout the region, resulting in destruction and disruption for local communities. While the rift may seem like a distant geological process, the reality is that it is deeply connected to the daily lives of those who live in its path. Could we be on the brink of a massive earthquake that will forever alter the region? But the rift's impact is not limited to seismic and volcanic activity. It's also contributing to the formation of new landforms. As the rift deepens, large cracks in the Earth's crust continue to widen, leading to the creation of vast valleys, gorges, and even lakes. The most famous of these is the Great Rift Valley, a massive system of valleys that stretches over 6,000 kilometers from the Red Sea to Mozambique. This geological wonder is the result of millions of years of tectonic activity and has become one of the most awe-inspiring landscapes on Earth. It's also a treasure trove of scientific discovery. The rift is home to some of the world's most ancient fossils, as well as diverse ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years. But even as the rift continues to carve out these breathtaking landscapes, it also raises important questions about the future of the region. What happens when these landforms become unstable? Will the shifting land create new, unforeseen challenges? The process of continental rifting is not unique to Africa. Similar geological events have shaped other parts of the world, including the formation of the Atlantic Ocean. However, the East African rift is unique because it is located in a densely populated region, and its impact is far-reaching. It affects not only the physical landscape, but also the lives of millions of people who depend on the land for agriculture, trade, and resources. As the rift continues to widen and volcanic activity intensifies, the future of these communities hangs in the balance. While the rift's impact may seem remote, it is undeniable that the tectonic forces driving this transformation will ultimately reshape the entire region. Could this transformation spark a massive migration of people away from the rift's path? Despite the dangers posed by the rift, scientists and researchers are excited about the opportunities it presents. The region is a goldmine for geological studies, offering a window into the Earth's inner workings. The East African rift is also a natural laboratory for studying the evolution of life. As the plates continue to move apart, new ecosystems are forming, offering the potential for groundbreaking discoveries in biology and ecology. But while the scientific community may view the rift as a source of opportunity, the people living in the region face a much more complex reality. The challenges of living near an active tectonic zone are profound, and it's not yet clear what the long-term effects of the rift will be for the millions of people who call this area home. Will the opportunity for discovery outweigh the potential for disaster in this volatile region? A volatile future. The East African Rift is no ordinary geological feature. It's a ticking time bomb. With each passing year, the tectonic activity in the region increases, and experts are closely monitoring the situation. The primary concern is the potential for a catastrophic event, a massive earthquake or volcanic eruption that could affect not only the surrounding areas, but the entire continent. As the plates continue to separate, the stress between them grows, and it's only a matter of time before it reaches a breaking point. The rift has already seen its fair share of earthquakes, but the fear is that the region is due for a much more significant seismic event. What will happen when the pressure finally builds to a point where the Earth can't hold it in any longer? Could we be witnessing the birth of a new geological era? In addition to seismic concerns, volcanic activity in the East African Rift presents another pressing issue. The rift is home to some of the world's most active volcanoes, including Mount Nyiragongo and Mount Kilimanjaro. These volcanoes are a constant reminder of the raw power lurking beneath the Earth's surface.
Volcano is like a sick person, and you have to monitor every time, every second.
While eruptions from these volcanoes have been relatively contained, the threat remains ever present. When eruptions occur, they have the potential to displace entire populations, destroy farmland, and contaminate water sources. The eruption of Mount Nyiragongo in 2002, which devastated the city of Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is a chilling example of what could happen again. How would a massive eruption reshape the political and social dynamics of East Africa? But volcanic activity in the rift zone isn't just about destruction, it's also about opportunity. The land surrounding the East African Rift is rich in natural resources, including valuable minerals, metals, and geothermal energy. The region is a hotspot for exploration and development, with countries like Kenya and Ethiopia tapping into its potential for economic growth. Geothermal energy, in particular, is one of the most promising resources in the area, with the rift's tectonic activity providing a natural source of heat. The Olkaria geothermal plant in Kenya, for example, is one of Africa's largest geothermal power stations. As the world moves toward more sustainable energy sources, the East African Rift may hold the key to a cleaner future. Could the rift's geothermal potential be the solution to Africa's energy crisis? However, as much as the rift zone offers economic opportunities, it also poses significant risks. The rapid urbanization of the region, coupled with the increased demand for resources, means that more people are moving into areas that are dangerously close to fault lines. Cities like Addis Ababa and Nairobi are expanding rapidly, and while they are benefiting from the region's economic boom, they are also sitting on the edge of a geological precipice. The construction of infrastructure in such a volatile area has raised concerns about building codes, urban planning, and disaster preparedness. What happens when an earthquake strikes and a city built without proper safeguards is suddenly facing the full force of nature? Could these growing urban centers become death traps in the event of a seismic disaster? The East African Rift is not just a scientific curiosity or a source of natural resources, it's also a geopolitical hotspot. As the region's importance grows, so does the involvement of global powers. China, for example, has been heavily investing in infrastructure projects across East Africa, including the construction of railways, roads, and energy plants. While these investments are designed to promote economic growth, they also bring political influence. The presence of China in the rift zone has raised concerns in the West, particularly with regard to the strategic control of vital resources and access to key shipping routes. As the rift continues to expand, the stakes in the region become higher. What happens when global powers vie for control over a volatile, resource-rich region like this? Could the East African Rift become a battleground for global influence? The future of the East African Rift is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the tectonic forces at play will continue to shape the destiny of the region for generations to come. As scientists work tirelessly to understand the rift's potential and prepare for the worst, the world watches with bated breath. Will this geological marvel become a source of prosperity or devastation? The answer lies in the balance between technological innovation, geopolitical maneuvering, and the natural forces that have shaped this region for millions of years. Could humanity's ingenuity be enough to harness the power of the rift without being consumed by it? Or is this a battle we are doomed to lose? What could happen if the rift zone is ignored? The East African rift's impact on human society cannot be underestimated. Yet for all its potential, there are still troubling questions surrounding the region's preparedness for a major seismic or volcanic event. The failure to properly address the risks associated with the rift zone could have dire consequences, not just for the local population, but for the global community as well. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions in this region could disrupt global supply chains, especially considering the increasing importance of East Africa as a key player in the global market. Could a major disaster in the rift zone be the trigger for an economic collapse, not just locally, but internationally? While many governments in the region are aware of the dangers posed by the East African rift, there is still much to be done in terms of disaster preparedness and response. Countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania have begun to make strides in improving infrastructure and creating emergency response plans, but the scale of the challenge is enormous. Earthquake-resistant buildings, early warning systems, and evacuation plans need to be implemented, especially in rapidly growing cities that are located close to fault lines. But with limited resources, many of these countries face tough decisions on how to prioritize disaster prevention without sacrificing economic development. Is the cost of ignoring these risks greater than the cost of preparing for them? What will it take for governments to act decisively before it's too late? International collaboration could be the key to mitigating the risks of the rift zone. Yet this is where things become complicated. The involvement of global powers like China and the US in the region has led to a complex political landscape. While China's investments in infrastructure are often seen as a boon for economic growth, they also carry the potential for geopolitical tension. As these foreign investments continue to grow, local governments may find themselves in a delicate balancing act, keeping the peace while managing both international interests and local needs. Will the rift's potential for disaster lead to greater cooperation? Or will the scramble for resources and influence escalate into conflict? Could the very efforts to prevent disaster in the rift zone spark an international crisis instead? Beyond the immediate risks to human life and property, there are environmental concerns tied to the East African rift as well. The tectonic activity in the region is responsible for the creation of vast geothermal reservoirs, but these same forces can lead to the destruction of ecosystems and wildlife habitats. Volcanic eruptions can cause widespread damage to forests, farmland, and freshwater sources, leaving long-lasting scars on the environment. Additionally, the disruption caused by seismic events can lead to soil erosion and the contamination of water supplies, exacerbating food and water security problems in a region that is already struggling with poverty. Could a catastrophic event in the rift zone lead to environmental collapse, making recovery even more difficult? The long-term effects of neglecting the risks associated with the East African rift could leave the region permanently altered. If a major earthquake or volcanic eruption occurs without proper infrastructure in place, the impact on local populations would be devastating. Entire cities could be destroyed, leaving millions homeless and without access to basic resources. The ripple effect could extend far beyond East Africa, disrupting global markets and potentially plunging the world into an economic crisis. Even with significant advancements in technology and preparedness, the rift zone remains a ticking time bomb. What happens when the world fails to take action in time? Is it possible to prevent the worst-case scenario, or is the rift zone an unstoppable force of nature? For the world to fully understand the importance of the East African rift, it's essential to consider not just the immediate aftermath of a disaster, but the long-term consequences that will follow. The region's potential to reshape the geopolitical and economic landscape is undeniable, but only if the world acts quickly and decisively. With every year that passes without proper preparation and planning, the risks grow exponentially. Will humanity wait until it's too late to act? Or will we rise to the challenge of protecting the future of the East African rift and its people? How science and technology could save the rift zone? As scientists and engineers work to better understand the East African rift, groundbreaking technologies are emerging that could change the game entirely. The use of satellite imagery and advanced seismic monitoring systems has allowed experts to track tectonic movement and predict potential earthquakes with greater accuracy. These technologies have already been employed in other seismic hot zones around the world, providing invaluable data that can inform disaster response efforts. The application of AI and machine learning to seismic data has opened up new possibilities for early detection, allowing authorities to act quickly and potentially save thousands of lives. Could AI-driven prediction models be the key to preventing a disaster in the East African Rift? In addition to predictive technologies, new construction techniques are being developed that could help make buildings in the rift zone more resilient to seismic activity. Engineers are working on earthquake-resistant designs that can withstand the forces of a major tremor, even in areas that are prone to intense ground shaking. These designs incorporate advanced materials, such as flexible steel and reinforced concrete, which are capable of absorbing and dissipating the energy released during an earthquake. While the cost of these technologies is high, their potential to protect lives and infrastructure in high-risk areas is immense. Could the development of earthquake-resistant technology be the game-changer that saves entire cities from devastation? Geothermal energy, which is abundant in the rift zone, has the potential to provide a sustainable and environmentally friendly source of power to the region. Already, several countries in East Africa, including Kenya and Ethiopia, have made significant strides in harnessing this energy source. The Olkaria geothermal power station in Kenya, for example, is one of the largest geothermal power plants in Africa, supplying electricity to millions of people. Geothermal energy not only has the potential to meet the region's growing energy demands, but also offers an opportunity to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels and improve environmental sustainability. Could the East African Rift become the backbone of a new energy revolution in Africa? Yet, as much as these technologies hold promise, there are challenges to their widespread implementation. The infrastructure required to support early warning systems, earthquake-resistant buildings, and geothermal energy production is expensive, and many countries in the region lack the financial resources to invest in such initiatives. Foreign investment and international collaboration will be critical to making these advancements a reality. The question is whether the political and economic conditions in the region can foster the kind of cooperation needed to address these challenges. Can the international community come together to support East Africa's efforts to safeguard the rift zone? Or will political rivalries prevent meaningful progress? Despite these obstacles, there is hope that the combined efforts of scientists, engineers, and policymakers can mitigate the risks of the East African Rift and protect the lives of millions of people. With the right investments in technology, infrastructure, and disaster preparedness, it is possible to turn the tide and ensure that the rift zone does not become the site of a global catastrophe. The future of the region depends on the actions taken today. Can the world rise to the occasion, or will the East African Rift remain an unpredictable force that shapes the fate of millions? What does the rift zone's future mean for the world? The East African Rift Zone is not just a local phenomenon. Its seismic activity and potential for volcanic eruption have global implications. As scientists continue to study the region, it becomes clear that a major disaster in the Rift Zone could trigger a cascade of events that could affect economies, industries, and ecosystems worldwide. While many might initially think of the immediate local impact of an earthquake or eruption, the ripple effects can be far-reaching. How would the world respond if an event in the East African Rift triggered a global economic downturn or disrupted critical industries? The interconnectedness of the global economy means that a significant event in East Africa could have devastating effects on supply chains, especially in industries that rely on raw materials sourced from the region. East Africa is already a key player in the global agricultural market, particularly in the export of coffee, tea, and other crops. A major earthquake or volcanic eruption could destroy crops, disrupt transportation, and cause a severe shortage of these critical commodities, leading to price hikes worldwide. In addition, East Africa's growing role in technology and manufacturing, particularly in Kenya's expanding tech hub and Ethiopia's rising industrial sector, means that a disruption in the region could have cascading effects on the global supply chain. Could the world's dependence on East Africa's growing industries lead to a global recession if the rift zone erupts in a catastrophic way? On the environmental front, the East African Rift has the potential to change the landscape in ways that would affect the globe. Volcanic eruptions and seismic events in the region could displace entire ecosystems. affecting wildlife habitats and agricultural lands. The ash and gases released by a volcanic eruption could affect the climate, potentially causing disruptions in global weather patterns. The ash fallout could block sunlight, leading to lower temperatures and possible disruptions to agriculture far beyond East Africa. As seen with the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815, volcanic activity in one part of the world can have devastating consequences on food production and climate worldwide. Could a disaster in the East African Rift trigger a global cooling event that would lead to food shortages across the world? Moreover, the growing competition between countries and corporations for access to resources and energy in the region adds another layer of complexity to the issue. As more countries begin to explore the potential of geothermal energy, oil, and minerals in East Africa, the race for control over these valuable resources intensifies. The presence of the rift zone itself, with its rich geothermal activity, could spark further geopolitical tensions. For example, countries and corporations eager to invest in geothermal energy could find themselves caught in a tug-of-war over land rights and access to the region's energy potential. If the region were to experience a disaster, the geopolitical fallout could strain international relations. Will the competition for resources in the rift zone lead to international conflicts, further complicating the global response to a disaster in the region? Despite these challenges, there are also opportunities for the global community to come together and mitigate the risks posed by the East African Rift. Collaborative international efforts could result in innovative solutions to strengthen the region's infrastructure and disaster preparedness. Countries from around the world could contribute to research, technology, and investment aimed at making the region more resilient to seismic events and volcanic eruptions. Furthermore, international aid could be mobilized in the event of a disaster, providing much-needed relief to the millions of people living in the rift zone. Could the East African Rift bring about a new era of global cooperation, where countries work together to address shared risks and challenges? However, whether the international community will act quickly and decisively enough to prevent a catastrophe in the rift zone remains to be seen. The urgency of the situation is clear, but will the political will and financial resources be enough to tackle the issue head-on? The rift zone is an unpredictable and volatile region, and the global community cannot afford to underestimate the potential consequences of inaction. Will the world rise to the occasion and protect the future of the East African Rift, or will we wait until it's too late to act? The East African Rift Zone holds the world's attention, not just because of its seismic volatility, but because of the intricate web of implications it carries for the future. From the potential for a global shift in markets to the profound environmental and geopolitical impacts, the threat of disaster in the Rift Zone cannot be ignored. As we've seen, technology, international cooperation, and preparedness will be key in preventing or mitigating the damage. Whether the world can rise to the challenge remains uncertain, but what's clear is this: the race is on, and the time to act is now. Let's hope that we choose to act before it's too late.